Hi, I'm Gabby, and welcome to the Happier Life Project, brought to you by My Possible Self, the free, award-winning mental health and wellness app designed to help you manage and take care of your mental health and well-being. Today, I've chosen to revisit one of my favourite episodes from 2.5 years ago. And no, it's not just because I'm being lazy. This episode is worth repeating because its message is completely timeless. And the topic is something that every single person is challenged by, I would say, on a daily basis. Negative thinking. It's the absolute worst, isn't it? We all experience it. At first, it may seem like just a fleeting thought, but left unchecked, it can spiral into a cycle that's very hard to break. These thoughts can eventually contribute to things like social anxiety, depression, stress, and low self-esteem. When they show up and keep showing up, it's very easy to get lost in them. Whether or not they're true, we start to believe them and let them take over our lives and emotions, leaving us feeling miserable. But what if there's a better way to handle those pesky voices in our heads? Today's guest is an absolute legend in the mental health world. Dr. Russ Harris is a best-selling author of The Happiness Trap, plus 8 other books. He's a doctor, therapist, world-renowned acceptance and commitment therapy, or ACT, trainer for health professionals, and a consult to the World Health Organization. Dr. Russ is also the creator of 21 brilliant YouTube videos that have collectively amassed a staggering 7.5 million views. Dr. Russ's work has touched countless lives, helping people all over the world transform their relationship with negative thinking. In this conversation, Dr. Russ talks about why he believes negative thoughts aren't bad thoughts, just like positive thoughts aren't always necessarily good. The ACT approach isn't about challenging whether your thoughts are good or bad. It's more about asking yourself, are these thoughts helpful? Worrying, catastrophizing, obsessing, ruminating. Dr. Russ unpacks why getting caught up in these streams of unhelpful thoughts is actually your mind's way of trying to protect you. He also dives into why his approach can be so effective. Plus, you'll get the chance to try some simple yet very powerful exercises during the next 40 minutes. So, ready to step forward towards a healthier, happier you? Let's get started. Well, let's get stuck in. What is ACT and how is it different to CBT, which is, I think, a lot more, people are more familiar with that term and that method. So what is ACT?
Well, ACT is acceptance and commitment therapy, which is an on-sounding name, but reflects a key message in this model. Accept what's out of your personal control and commit to action that improves your life. And there's basically 3 strands to this model of therapy. One is basically learning a set of psychological skills to, I call them unhooking skills, ways to kind of unhook yourself from difficult thoughts, feelings, and emotions so that they kind of lose their impact. They can't jerk you around. They can't kind of hook you and pull you out of your life and pull you into self-defeating patterns of behavior. The second strand is getting in touch with your values, which are like your heart's deepest desires for how you want to behave as a human being, how you want to treat yourself and others and the world around you. And then you use those values as a compass to guide your actions, to take action and do things that make life meaningful. And the third strand is really focusing skills, really being able to focus your attention on what's important right now and engage in what you're doing, so that you can do it well and make the most of it if it's something pleasurable or enjoyable. And those kind of three skill sets come together to help people develop this ability called psychological flexibility, which is your ability to be in the present moment, right here, right now, kind of focusing your attention on what's important, to open up and make room for all the difficult thoughts and feelings that may be showing up in this moment, just kind of let them flow through you without sweeping you away, and to do what matters, to act effectively guided by your values, sort of be present, open up, do what matters. And the greater your ability to do that, the greater your quality of life, the greater your health and well-being. This correlates with, recovery from or protection against things like depression and anxiety and PTSD, and even with, psychosis and addiction. So it's a very, very useful skill to develop, this ability to be present and open and do what matters.
In your book, actually, the stats might even be higher now. You said that 80% of our thoughts are negative. So when we're talking about unhooking from them and not getting swept away with the tide, it's a tsunami that we're dealing with on a daily basis. Yeah. So it sounds so great and like, oh, that sounds like the absolute dream, and how much peace must we have from our minds if we can achieve it. But 80% plus of those thoughts are bad and unpleasant.
Yeah, well, so, I'm glad you raised that statistic. Yeah, because it's completely normal and natural to have negative thoughts, and there's no one who's eliminated them. And the message that's kind of out there in pop culture is negative thoughts are bad, and you've got to eliminate them, and you've got to think positively, and don't worry, and be happy. And that's just setting people up for failure. That's so unrealistic. And negative thoughts are not necessarily bad, and positive thoughts are not necessarily good. For example, if you get hooked by positive thoughts, it can lead to inflated self-confidence, narcissism, arrogance. If you're drunk and you have the positive thought, well, I'm the world's greatest driver, I can drive safely even when I'm drunk. If you get hooked by that thought, you're going to have a car crash and end up in prison. So whereas negative thoughts can be very helpful. If your negative thoughts are telling you like, oh, I'm going to fail for that exam next week, that can motivate you actually to do the homework that you need to do and the preparation you need to do to pass that exam. So in the ACT approach, it's not really about whether your thoughts are positive or negative or optimistic or pessimistic. It's about whether they're helpful. If I let these thoughts that my mind is generating, if I let them guide what I say and do, does that help me to build the sort of life I want to build, live the sort of life I want to live, behave like the sort of person I really want to be? And what we learn to do is kind of use helpful thoughts to guide our actions and unhook from all of those unhelpful thoughts that are guaranteed to just keep showing up again and again and again and again and again.
Yeah. Why do they show up more than the helpful ones? I think for a lot of people, like, why are we wired this way?
Well, if you believe in evolution, this goes right back to basic survival. What drives evolution is the survival of the fittest. And so, if there was, let's go back 300,000 years. Our species, Homo sapiens, scientists think we appeared about 300,000 years ago. Now, at that point in history, we've got the same basic needs as every other animal on the planet: food, water, shelter, and sex. Not all at the same time, gets a bit messy, but those are the basic needs. But none of those things are important if you get killed. The top priority of the human mind, the job it's got to do better than any other job, is to stop you from getting killed. If it doesn't do that job brilliantly well, you won't live long enough to pass on your genes to the next generation, to have kids and so forth. So your mind 300,000 years ago has to be constantly on the lookout for things that could hurt or harm you. Is there that shadow on the horizon? Is that a friend or a foe? In the back of that cave, is there a wolf or a bear? That rustling sound in the bushes, is that is that a sparrow or is that a saber-toothed tiger? There ever was a caveman or cave woman that was Mr. or Mrs. Positive Thinker, always optimistic, always looking on the bright side. Oh, that rustling sound in the bushes, that's just a sparrow. Chomp. They didn't live very long. That's not your ancestor. That's not the one you evolved from. You came from the one that was always on the lookout for things that could hurt or harm them. And now after 300,000 years of evolution, the human mind is continually doing this, continually on the lookout. You're not consciously aware of it all the time, but it's going on even in your sleep. And I often ask audiences, I say, put your hand up if you've been awake at 3 o'clock in the morning with your mind warning you about things that might go wrong. Every hand in the audience goes up, right?
Yeah, it happened to me at 3 o'clock this morning, actually.
Me too.
Really? That is actually quite reassuring because, catastrophizing, I'm sure you have a lot of patients that come to you with this, and we know that it's in the future, but we just think we go to the worst case scenario, and because it loops and it's this pesky thought that we just can't disassociate from, we believe it, don't we? And then it triggers these unpleasant emotions, and then here we are in this awful spiral of misery.
Absolutely. There's a number of cognitive processes that can just completely wrap us up. One is worrying, worrying or catastrophizing, which is future oriented about bad things that are going to happen in the future. Then there's ruminating, which is past oriented, going over bad things that have happened in the past and why did this happen and what does that mean and so forth. Obsessing, which can be over the past or the future. And it's just so easy to get caught up in these streams of unhelpful thoughts. And so one of the
it's torture.
It is torture.
We're torturing ourselves, aren't we?
Well, so I kind of, people often get the wrong idea that their mind is out to sabotage them or hurt them, and it's not the case. What it's useful to consider it that your mind is like an overly helpful friend. Have you ever had one of those friends that was just trying so hard to help, they actually got in the way and became annoying and caused problems for you?
Yeah, that's the mind.
Perhaps a friend or a relative, maybe.
Or they're just a Debbie Downer. They always are like, thinking on the negative rather than the positive. Yeah,
exactly. And that's basically what your mind's trying to do. You can take any kind of negative thought pattern and you will basically find that it's basically your mind trying to help you, like worrying, catastrophizing. That's your mind trying to prepare you keep you safe. This bad stuff could happen. You need to be prepared. Kind of ruminating on the past. That's your mind trying to help you learn from the past. Let's learn from this so that you're better prepared if it happens again in the future. You can take action.
What if it's unhelpful? What if it's things from the past that aren't necessarily signposting you in the right direction for the future, but it's just you're kind of locked onto that?
Absolutely. Well, that's unfortunately what often happens. So kind of the intentional purpose of your mind is to help, but very often it actually becomes unhelpful, like one of those overly helpful friends. A good example is self-judgment. Our minds generate all sorts of harsh, negative self-judgments. And that's basically your mind trying to beat you into shape. It's like, stop doing this, do something different, shape up, watch out. If you don't change what you're doing, this bad stuff's going to happen to you. But that's a very ineffective way of motivating people. That leads people to kind of end up miserable and depressed, But the purpose underlying that is your mind is basically a problem-solving machine. It's trying to solve problems, keep you safe, give you what you want.
You made me think about as well the different ways that we try and avoid these thoughts by pushing them aside, trying to distract ourselves, numbing ourselves with maybe booze or comfort eating or, choose your own adventure there. But that's actually the most unhelpful thing we can do. Is it better to address them, or is it better to acknowledge them and then try and carry on?
Well, again, that's a good question. That most of the strategies you've mentioned there involve kind of getting into a sort of battle with your thoughts. I'm trying to push them
Yeah.
away or suppress them or fight them or challenge them. It takes a lot of time and energy and effort. And what we know is that a lot of those strategies actually have a rebound effect. You can sort of push the thoughts out of your head for a while, but they actually come back with greater and greater frequency. So, for example, I don't know if anyone recommends this anymore, but certainly in the old days, CBT programs used to recommend thought stopping. You'd snap an elastic band, or you'd shout stop, or you would imagine a stop sign in your head when these unwanted thoughts showed up. Hopefully no one recommends that anymore, because the research is clear. It does make the thoughts go away for a short space of time, but over time they bounce back with more and more frequency and intensity. So it's a little bit like trying to hold a ball under the water. You can do it for a while, but sooner or later your arm gets tired, and when you release it, the ball goes pow and pops back up again. So trying to suppress, fight, argue, challenge your thoughts is often counterproductive, and takes a lot of energy. I mean, most of us have experienced this thing where we start debating with our thoughts. You kind of get into it's a bit like those old Tom and Jerry cartoons where you've got a devil on one side and an angel on the other side, and you start having this battle between your thoughts, and very hard to focus on what you're doing or be engaged in your life while you're all caught up in this internal debate. So ACT, teaches these unhooking skills. The technical name for them is cognitive defusion skills, big word, but kind of helping you to sort of diffuse from your thoughts, unhook from them. You allow them to be there, and you allow them to come and stay and go in their own good time, without getting into a fight with them, without trying to push them away, without trying to hide from them. A bit like, just letting cars come and go past your house. You don't rush out and try to stop the traffic. You just let the cars come and go.
I remember that. You talked about that, I think, in your book, or if not your book, definitely your YouTube videos, about fusion and then diffusion. So fusion is where that thought, which is just a story, but we take it and we accept it as real, and that's the fusion process, right? And then defusion is what you're saying that you do within the ACT model, which is pulling yourself away from that story and sort of dispelling it or seeing it for what it is.
Seeing it for what it is. I mean, when you fuse with a thought, whether it's positive or negative or true or false, what happens is that thought has a huge impact over your behavior. So when you're fused with thoughts or hooked by thoughts, your thoughts seem like very important things that you need to give all your attention. They seem like rules or commands that you have to obey. They seem like very good advice that you should follow. They seem like the absolute truth. And so they have a lot of power over you. Whereas when you defuse from thoughts, when you see them for what they are, that thoughts are basically words and pictures combining together in your head. And when you can sort of see in a state of defusion that your thoughts are words and pictures, it reduces their impact. The thought may or may not be true. It's certainly not a rule or a command that you have to obey or follow. It's certainly not something you have to give all your attention. And it's certainly not something you have to fight with or run away from. So, the thought's still there, but it's lost a lot of its impact.
So what are a couple of the techniques in terms of diffusing that you found to be really effective?
Well, the first technique that I invite people to try around, to play with is just a very simple one. Maybe your listeners could actually do this. If they bring to mind, let's work with a negative self-judgment, as we've all got lots of them. That's a good one. So if your listeners sort of bring to mind a short negative self-judgment, like, for example, Gabby, if you could listen into my mind when it's beating me up and giving me a hard time, this is what you would hear. Now, you wouldn't hear this all on the same day, but if you listened in enough, you would hear, and I invite listeners to see, if I listened into your minds, would I hear something similar? This is what my mind says. I'm fat, I'm old, I'm stupid, I'm incompetent, I'm an underachiever, I'm weird, I don't fit in, I'm boring. If you knew what I was really like, you wouldn't like me. I'm a lousy father, I'm a hypocrite, it, and I could go on, right?
Yeah, I'm unlovable. I'm not good enough for a relationship. All of that
Yeah.
stuff as well.
You have some of those thoughts yourself, Gabby?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And this is the big secret. Everyone's got lots of these thoughts. It's so. If your listeners want to just take one of those sort of negative self-judgments and just put it into a short sentence: I am X, or I'm not Y enough, I'm fat, or I'm stupid, or I'm not smart enough. What I'm going to ask them to do is to listen, to buy into this thought, believe it as much as you can for about 10 seconds, which will obviously make you feel a bit yucky. And then I'm going to take you through a simple defusion or unhooking technique to help you take a bit of the impact out of that thought. So if you and your listeners are willing to do this, bring to mind now a nasty negative self-judgment, and don't challenge or dispute it. Buy into it. I'm fat, I'm stupid, I'm not smart enough, I'm a lousy mother or father, whatever. Starting now, buy into it. Believe it as much as you can. See if you can really let it hook you. Let it pull you in. Now, silently replay that thought with these words in front. I am having the thought that. So I'm having the thought that I'm incompetent. Just notice what happens. And now replay it again. I notice I'm having the thought that. So a slightly longer phrase. I notice I'm having the thought that I'm stupid. And so what happened for you, Gabby, as you did that?
I think these thoughts are, they're too deep rooted that I see what you're doing, but for me, I'm still sat in there. I'm still believing the thoughts. Maybe that's just today. A different day would be a different story.
Yeah.
But however, it's like distancing yourself, isn't it, from
Did you get a sense of
going
distancing,
on?
a sense of stepping back, seeing the thought?
Yeah.
Or seeing it?
Yeah,
and that's
definitely.
important, because we're not trying to stop you from believing these thoughts. That's another big difference between ACT and CBT. It's not about whether you believe the thoughts or not. It's not about whether they're true or false. It's about seeing them for their words and pictures, and in the ACT model, we're not really interested in whether you believe them or think they're true or false. What we're interested in is, do they help you to be the person you want to be and do the things you want to do? So it's kind of like when you're hooked by these thoughts, you're not even really aware that you're having them. They're just dominating what you do. But if you unhook a bit, you can say, okay, well, here are these thoughts showing up, whether I believe them or not. The question is, what do I want to do? Do I want to let these things guide my arms and my actions and my hands and my feet and the words that I say? Or do I want to acknowledge, okay, this is what my mind's giving me in this moment? These thoughts are normal and natural, and in some sense, it's my mind trying to help, but they're not really particularly going to help me right now. So let's come back to my values. What do I want to do right now? What's important to me? And so, when I first introduced diffusion, it's not uncommon that people, particularly with self-judgments, they'll say, but it's true, I really am.
Well, if you've been thinking it for 20, 30 years, then it's not an overnight win, is it? Because otherwise everybody would be doing it and much happier.
Well, exactly. So it's not it's not about whether they're true or false. If I give you an example, this guy came to see me with a diagnosis of depression, and he was a massively overweight guy and deeply depressed. He had a very harsh negative inner critic. His mind was saying, I'm fat, I'm disgusting, I'm worthless, I'm killing myself with all the crap that I'm eating. We started doing a bit of diffusion, and I took him through that little technique that I just demonstrated. And he said, but it's true, I really am fat. And he pulled up his shirt to show me.
Wow.
And so, I kind of had the conversation with him that I've just been having with you. I said, look, in this approach, we're not really interested in whether your thoughts are true or false. The question is, when your mind starts speaking to you this way and saying, I'm fat, I'm useless, I'm worthless, if you get hooked by those thoughts, what happened? You go, well, I'll get depressed, mate. Yeah. And then what happened? Well, then I then I eat loads of crap. Is that okay? So,
Yeah.
kind of getting hooked by those thoughts is not particularly helpful for you. And then I kind of said, let's talk about values for a moment. So one of my favorite ways of getting people in touch with their values is with a magic wand. I said, I've got a magic wand here. I'll wave this magic wand so that you can treat your body the way you really want to treat it. Okay, nothing will stop you. No thoughts, no feelings. You will treat your body the way you really want to. How would you treat your body? And he said, well, wouldn't eat so much shit, mate. Okay, so what would you eat instead? Well, guess I don't know. I'd eat more healthy stuff. Yeah, okay, so you'd eat different food, more healthy food. Any other ways you'd treat your body differently? Well, you wouldn't sit around all day just watching crap on the telly. Okay, so you might move more, exercise more. Yeah. Okay, so it sounds like there's an important value here that's getting lost. I'm going to call that value self-care. And if you were in touch with the value of self-care, caring for yourself, you'd be doing different things, eating differently, exercising more. Okay. And now when your mind comes in and starts saying, I'm fat, I'm useless, I'm worthless, if you get all caught up in that, does it help you to live those values and do the things that's important? Well, no, it kind of hooks you and pulls in the opposite direction. So there's this kind of interplay between living our values. It's not just about diffusion. It's also seeing, what do I want to be doing? If I wasn't let these automatic thoughts dictate what I do, what would I be doing differently? And then we can ask the question, is these thoughts helping me to live my values, or are they getting in the way?
Wow, that is such powerful stuff. I mentioned at the start of the interview about some of your YouTube videos. I really responded to the radio doom and gloom one because I have a background in radio. So, but just listening to you with the one story, again, it's just you have this very visual and simple way of helping us to get to grips with some really complex stuff, because the mind is so complex, isn't it?
It is very much. You can just start by kind of noticing your thoughts and just recognizing that they are normal to have. That makes a huge difference too, because if we're kind of, there's something wrong with me for having all of these negative thoughts. Well, now you've got two problems. You've got the thoughts, and then all the judgments about something being wrong with you for having them, and then all the struggles that creates. Our mind is a complex thing for sure. And yet there are some simple skills we can do to handle our mind more effectively.
So when it comes to our feet, that we've talked loads about the thoughts and the thoughts of these stories, and some amazing ways of disassociating ourselves with them. But if the damage has been done and we're locked in, and then this triggers the emotions and the painful feelings, and then we treat those feelings and in the same way of the thoughts, it's almost like we're down to the next stage of the awful cycle. We try and numb them or suppress them because it feels horrible. So have you got any suggestions there for where we've allowed the thought to become something that we believe is real? Maybe it's something that's coming up in the future and we're just expecting the worst case scenario, or the outcome is just awful to even think about, but we believe it's going to happen. So then we've got the emotion behind it, and now we're feeling anger or grief or whatever. What happens then?
Well, it's so it's a complex interaction. Difficult thoughts can trigger difficult feelings and emotions, and vice versa. Painful emotions trigger difficult thoughts, and also the environment around us triggers difficult thoughts and feelings, and then how we behave in response to that also impacts our thoughts and feelings. So all of these things feed off each other, and what often happens is, in really challenging circumstances, when there are really difficult thoughts and feelings showing up, I use the analogy of an emotional storm. An emotional storm blows up, maybe lots of difficult thoughts whirling around in our head, lots of painful feelings and sensations in our body, maybe an anger storm or an anxiety storm or a guilt storm or a sadness storm. And what happens is that storm kind of sweeps us away. We can't focus on what's what's important, we can't act effectively. So the skill that I introduce people to, I call it dropping anchor. And, it's like if you had a boat and it was sailing into the harbor, and there was a big storm about to blow up, the first thing you'd do is drop anchor. If you don't drop anchor, then when that storm hits, your boat's going to get swept out to sea. And so this exercise, dropping anchor, is a way of working with your own inner emotional and cognitive storms, if you like. Anchors don't control storms. When you drop an anchor, it doesn't make a storm go away. An anchor holds the boat steady, and the storm will come and go in its own good time. And it's the same with this psychological skill of dropping anchor. It's not actually a way to control your thoughts and feelings, but it's a way to hold yourself steady, take control of your arms and your legs, focus your attention on what's important, and let these thoughts and feelings flow through you without sweeping you away. So, I mean, if you want, I can take listeners through this. It'll take about 5 minutes. I don't know if we've got enough time.
I mean, yeah, if you don't mind, this is all amazing stuff.
Well, you mentioned the World Health Organization. That protocol I wrote for them was an app protocol for use in refugee camps, and they've been using it in places, in refugee camps in Syria and Uganda and Turkey and so forth, where there's often 200,000 to 400,000 people living in tents in these dire circumstances. Wow. No quick, easy solutions. You can be stuck in that camp for years, sometimes even decades, in very difficult circumstances. But nonetheless, what the World Health Organization found was some simple ACT skills made a difference to these people. It reduced their depression, it reduced their PTSD, it gave them a better quality of life. It didn't magically fix all their problems, but just by giving them some skills to handle their thoughts and feelings better, it made a difference to their quality of life. And this dropping anchor it's the first skill we teach in that program. So it's a very useful skill, seems to be well received by cultures all around the world. So let me take your listeners through it then. So just a reminder that this is not a way to control your thoughts and feelings. We're not trying to get rid of unwanted thoughts or feelings or make you feel good. Just like, anchors don't get rid of storms. They hold boats steady, and that's what we're aiming to do here. So all dropping anchor skills are based on a simple formula called the ACE formula. The A is for acknowledge your thoughts and feelings, or acknowledge what's showing up inside you. The C is for connect with your body. So you do anything that helps you to connect with your body, whether it's moving, stretching, breathing, anything that kind of just gives that sense of connection with your physical body. And the E is for engage in what you're doing, engage in the world around you, engage in the activity you're doing. And so we're going to cycle through that ACE formula about 3 or 4 times. And I just invite your listeners to notice what happens as you do that. So let's start with the A. Just take a moment to acknowledge what thoughts are showing up for you right now, what your mind's saying, whether it's whirring away or whether it's quiet. And acknowledge what you're feeling in your body. Is there any areas of tightness, tension, sensations in your chest or tummy, particular feelings like sadness or anxiety? Just acknowledge what's there. Acknowledge means that we just notice it's there, and we don't try to avoid it or get rid of it or fight with it. It's just there. Now, the C is connect with your body. So what I am doing as I'm talking to you is I'm pushing my feet into the floor, and I'm straightening my back in the chair, and I'm having a stretch. And I encourage your listeners to do something similar. Obviously, if you're driving a car, you're not going to be stretching, but you can still move your feet and adjust your position, something that gets you into your body. Some people like to, take a slow, deep breath, notice the movement of the breath, anything that just helps you. So there's thoughts and feelings showing up right now, and there's a body around them that you can move and connect with. And around this body, there's a whole world. So look around you and notice what you can see and hear. Breathe in the air, notice what it's like. And kind of get a sense. There's thoughts and feelings showing up. There's a body around them you can move, and a world around you that you can engage in. and refocus your attention on what you're doing right now, which is listening to me and doing this exercise. So bring that attention back. So that's the basic formula. I'm going to do it again. I'm going to talk a little bit less this time round. So once again, take a moment to acknowledge your thoughts and feelings. What's your mind saying? What's happening in your body? And this time, see if you can silently describe the thoughts and feelings, just with a little sentence like, I am noticing thoughts about, or I am noticing feelings of. Here's a feeling of anxiety. Here's my mind worrying. Just a short sentence, acknowledging it's there. Not trying to avoid it, control it, get rid of it, just acknowledging this is what's showing up inside me right now. And then once again, connecting with your body. So once again, I'm pushing my feet into the floor. I'm straightening my back. I'm having a stretch. I invite listeners to move, stretch. As I said, some people like to breathe, take a slow, deep breath. Really just anything that gets that body moving. So there's thoughts and feelings and a body around them that you can move. And then once again, engaging in the world, opening your eyes and ears, looking around. What can you see? What can you hear? Breathing in the air. So there's thoughts and feelings, a body around them, a world around your body. And let's just do that one last time. Okay, so once again, acknowledging what kind of thoughts and feelings are showing up right now. They may be the same as before. They may have changed. They may be positive, negative, pleasant, unpleasant. Just whatever they are, acknowledge. These are the thoughts and feelings showing up here in this moment. And once again, connecting with your body can be similar way than before or different. Once again, I'm stretching and pushing my feet down. I'm shifting in my chair. That really connects me with my body. So I'm aware of my thoughts and feelings, and I'm also in touch with my body, moving it. And I'm also engaging in the world around me. So again, notice what you can see and hear. Look around, notice a few things you maybe didn't notice before, maybe didn't hear before. Again, that sense of where you are, what you're doing. And again, refocusing your attention on what you're doing right now, which is finishing off this exercise with me. So that's the basic exercise. And, you can do long versions of that or short versions of that. With practice, you can do that in a few seconds. What happened for you as you did that exercise?
Again, at first, a bit of resistance. Anxiety tends to, for me, be in the pit of the stomach. So I was, I do get anxious. So, but then as we did it again and again, I did feel that kind of that feeling in the stomach start to lessen and quieten. Yeah, really, really helpful. Goodness. Thank you.
So as a nice bonus, often uncomfortable thoughts and feelings do reduce. That does quite often happen, but that is the bonus. That's not the point. Just like if a boat drops anchor, if the storm dies down, that's a nice bonus. The anchor didn't make the storm die down. So what we quite often find, what happens as people do that exercise is they stop resisting or fighting their thoughts and feelings. And as a result, they do reduce. I mean, this is the interesting thing with ACT. There's over 3,000 published studies, and we see that symptoms come down and down and down in depression, anxiety, addiction, but not from trying to get rid of the thoughts and feelings, not from trying to control them, but rather from just learning this ability to kind of step back and let them be there and let them flow through you and let them come and stay and go in their own good time. So I say to my clients, look, if that happens, then enjoy it, nice bonus. But I say, please don't think that's the point. If you take this dropping anchor away and start using it to try to get rid of your anxiety, you're going to be back here next week telling me it's not working. It's a bonus to be enjoyed. It's not the point,
It's learning to live with these thoughts and not letting them take over your life. They're not going to disappear, right?
Absolutely. There's numerous different skills. The idea is that you build on these skills bit by bit, piece by piece. But there's never going to come a day when you have a stress-free life. There will be problems. Life is full of problems. A full human life comes with the full range of emotions, not just the ones that feel good. And your mind has evolved to think negatively. So throughout your life, there's going to be lots and lots of difficult thoughts and feelings showing up. So it's about learning how to take the impact out of them, take the power out of them, learn how to let them, I often use the phrase, let them flow through you. Not sweeping you away, not fighting against them, just let them flow through you while you take control of your actions, live your values, do things that are meaningful, and focus your attention on what you're doing. If you're doing something enjoyable, you'll get much more pleasure out of it if you really focus on it. If you're doing something important, you'll do it much better if you focus on it. One of the problems is that we're so caught up in our thoughts and feelings. A lot of the time we're distracted, we're on autopilot, so we don't really get the pleasure from doing enjoyable things. And when we're doing important things, we don't do them very well.
Does replacing the unhelpful thoughts with positive ones, does that help? If we can't get rid of it, can we try replacing it? Or does that not work?
Well, I say to clients, look, if your first language is English and you learn Hungarian, well, now you've got Hungarian and English. English doesn't disappear. So you can certainly learn new ways of thinking, but that doesn't get rid of the old ones. And this is one of the things they forget to tell you on positive thinking programs. Learn to think positively, but that's not going to magically stop all of this other stuff showing up. These are deeply entrenched neuronal pathways. But what ACT does is, rather than, it's a little bit different from some other models where they kind of go in and they challenge the thought content and try to come up with a positive thought. What we do is kind of unhook from the unhelpful thought, which may be positive or negative, may be true or false. We kind of unhook from the unhelpful thought, and then we come back to our values. Now, I guess you could say that values are a form of positive thinking, but that's not what people usually mean by positive thinking. So I'm not comfortable with that way of describing it. But values are a way of thinking. It's like, okay, if I want to be the person I want to be right now, do the things that are important to me, how can I put these values into play? What's important in this moment? Many of these kind of diffusion skills or unhooking skills also involve thinking. So, for example, a popular one is naming the story. So you put all these thoughts, feelings, emotions, memories into one big container. Let's suppose it was a book or a documentary that magically contained all your thoughts and feelings and memories related to this particular issue. And we give it a title, the something story. So the generic catch-all version is the not good enough story. But people can come up with their own title: the black hole story, the stupid Susan story, the old and lonely story, whatever it is, Right. And the idea is that whenever a thought, feeling, emotion, or memory that's connected to this story shows up, you acknowledge it. You go, there's the not good enough story. I know that one. Aha. And then you drop anchor, focus your attention, get in touch with your values, get on with your life. So another kind of diffusion technique is called thanking your mind. So this plays into the idea that your mind's basically an overly helpful friend. So your mind starts telling you that I'm not good enough story, and you go, here it is again. Here's the not good enough story. Thanks, mind. I know you're trying to help, and it's okay. I've got this handled. Yeah. Get back to your values, start doing what's important, focus your attention.
Wow, Dr. Russ Harris, this has just been such a fantastic conversation. Thank you for sharing all these, wonderful strategies. I can't think of anybody who's going to listen to this that isn't going to want to go and buy the Happiness Trap now, because you go into a lot more detail, especially this new edition with 50% more content. I'm definitely going to go for the Audible version so that I can I like to listen and walk. For me, that's really good therapy. So it's thehappinesstrap.com to learn more.
Yeah, for people kind of interested in self-help and personal development, thehappinesstrap.com. if there happen to be therapists or coaches or counselors listening to this that are looking for professional development or learning about ACT, then the website they probably want is psychwire.com.
Brilliant. 2 more questions as we bring this conversation to a close. Can you, because this is the Happier Life Project, can you define what is happiness to you?
Oh, that's a great question. So, the book's called The Happiness Trap because common ideas about happiness are misleading, inaccurate, and will actually make you miserable if you hold on to them too tightly. And one of these is the popular notion of happiness. Most people, if you ask them what happiness is, they'll say it's feeling good, or, it's a good feeling. And that's a very recent idea of happiness. There's probably only really been around for about a century. Throughout most of human history, happiness has been defined not as feeling good, but as doing good, as living by your values, living a meaningful life, doing what's purposeful. So the ancient Greeks had 2 different words. Hedemonia, from where we get the word hedonism, was all about pleasure and feeling good. And that's what most people think of happiness today. But they also had a word called eudaimonia, which was about living by your values, living a meaningful life, behaving like the person you really want to be deep in your heart. And that concept is totally aligned with ACT. And so I would define happiness not as feeling good, but I would define happiness as living a rich, full, and meaningful life while feeling the full range of human emotions. And that includes both the pleasant ones and the unpleasant ones.
Wow. And I have to ask this question because I ask it to every guest, and it's to bring everything full circle and back to the title of the podcast and this episode. And you've already shared so much, so maybe it's something that you've already given us to do, but I ask every guest to set us some homework. What is a simple project that we can do based on unhooking from the unhelpful thoughts that will help us on our journey towards building a happier life?
I would recommend is that you practice dropping anchor throughout the day. You can do the longer exercises to build up the skill, and then you can just do shorter 10-second versions where you just notice what you're feeling, push your feet into the floor, look around you, take control of your actions. And then just look for little opportunities throughout the day to drop anchor. You don't have to wait till an emotional storm blows up. A boat will drift out of the harbor even when the weather's good. We drift off all day. We get caught up in our thoughts and feelings and we drift off, So when you kind of notice that and drop an anchor and refocus, it brings you back. It brings you back into the present moment.
Oh, Dr. Russ Harris, thank you so much for today. What an absolute pleasure.
Well, thanks for having me.
You rock. Thank you so much. Oh gosh, isn't Dr. Russ Harris absolutely incredible? Since our chat, I've been practicing some of his techniques and I've found them to be so helpful and effective. So thanks again to Dr. Russ Harris, and thank you to you for making it through to the end of this episode of the Happier Life Project with me, Gabby Sanderson. If you are suffering with your mental health, there is a crisis button on the My Possible Self app, which will signpost you to the contact information for immediate expert advice. For those of you who are listening not on the app, but on one of the podcast platforms, the My Possible Self app is completely free to download, so you don't need to worry about it costing you anything. Make sure you subscribe and leave a review if you found this episode helpful. And to find and follow us on social media, we are at My Possible Self, and I've been at Radio Gabby. So until the next one, do take care, and bye for now.